to begin. Yep. Senator Merkley.
Thank you very much, Chair Graham. And I'm going to start with Merkley Amendment number 1. And this amendment takes us back to the original purpose of reconciliation. In 1974, all 100 senators of the U.S. Senate agreed to create a filibuster-free pathway for one purpose: reducing the deficit. Now, during the debate that we had earlier today, I heard a lot of colleagues across the aisle say they're all for reducing the deficit. I put up a chart that showed under every single Republican administration, the deficits increased year after year, and under every Democratic administration, they decreased every year. So let's match the rhetoric with the act. Let's put the walk into the talk and restore the principle that reconciliation is to either create a deficit neutral, that is not increase the deficit, or better yet, decrease the deficits rather than to increase them. So this amendment simply restores that vision. It's consistent with what Chairman Graham has said he wants to do with this reconciliation bill.
Ladies and gentlemen, patriots of this great nation, welcome back to Right View Nation channel, where we stand for truth, liberty, and fiscal responsibility. Today, we're diving into a heated exchange between Senator John Kennedy and Senator Jeff Merkley over a proposed amendment that, get this, Democrats suddenly care about now that they're out of power. But where was this so-called fiscal responsibility when they had full control? Let's break it down.
Senator Kennedy. Senator Kennedy.
I have a question,
Okay.
and I ask this gently and with great respect. If this is such a swell idea, why didn't you propose it under the Biden administration when my Democratic colleagues used reconciliation?
Yes. So the history of this is that it was changed in 1996. The principle of all 100 senators voting for reconciliation to only decrease the deficit was in 1974, and then it held for 22 years. But in 1996, the Bush administration wanted to do a significant set of tax reductions and decided they couldn't get them passed with Democratic support, so they would do it by themselves. And so the majority leader at that time, Robert Dole, put into the parliamentary position Robert Dove, who had worked for Dole, and the parliamentarian delivered a ruling completely out of sync with the history of reconciliation and said, oh, you know what? Even though it's not in the law, even though it was all about deficit reduction, we're going to allow deficit increases if they're for taxes. And the Republican majority proceeded to affirm that. This was called a nuclear option, exercised in 1996. Now, Kent Conrad, when he was chair of this committee, repeatedly, every single time he was able, he put the Conrad rule back in place. Since then, we've had multiple Republican tax bills that have gone through this committee, increasing the deficit, but we've also had one Democratic bill that increased the deficit. That was the American Rescue Plan. That is the on and only time the Democrats increased the deficit, and that was because of response to the challenge we faced with COVID and the collapse of the economy.
But my question remains, why didn't you want to make this change when you guys were in the majority under President Biden?
And to my colleague, I can't be in, I wasn't in charge of this committee, so I can't speak to the details. I don't know the answer. I do know the only time the Democrats used reconciliation that increased deficit was the American Rescue Plan, and that was because the economy was in dire condition due to the collapse caused by COVID.
All right, thank you. And along with what Senator Kennedy said, the last Congress, you passed 2 reconciliation bills that blow up the deficit. The American Rescue Plan, as you indicated, increased the deficit by $2 trillion. CBO and the Joint Committee on Taxation badly underestimated the cost of the Inflation Reduction Acts. Green energy tax credits, which now are expected to cost over $1 trillion by some estimates. Republicans' border reconciliation bill is going to be fully paid for, so this amendment is unnecessary. Thank you very much.
But totally consistent with the chairman's vision.
There you go. Next. Well, I thought we were going to stack them.
We are stacking. Yeah, just reiterating at the end.
Time has expired on debate for the amendment. A recorded vote will be taken at the agreed upon time.
So, Senator Merkley wants to take us back to 1974, when reconciliation was supposedly all about reducing the deficit. A noble idea, right? Well, hold on just a minute, because if you actually look at the track record of the Democratic Party, they only seem to care about deficit reduction when they're not the ones in charge of the checkbook. This is why I love Senator Kennedy. The man has a way of cutting right through the nonsense and asking the questions that the American people want answers to. If Merkley and his pals were so concerned about the deficit, why didn't they push this amendment when Biden was in office? Why didn't they demand that their own party follow the same rules they now want to enforce? The reality, folks, is that Democrats have been the kings of reckless spending. Merkley himself admitted that the American Rescue Plan blew up the deficit. And let's not forget the Inflation Reduction Act, which, spoiler alert, didn't actually reduce inflation, and its green energy credits that are now projected to cost over $1 trillion. And now they want to pretend to care about fiscal responsibility? Give me a break. Classic Democrat playbook. Blame Republicans for everything. Merkley talks about how Republicans supposedly nuked the reconciliation rules in 1996 to allow tax cuts. But let's be real. Those tax cuts boosted economic growth and created jobs. And let's not forget, Democrats have had plenty of chances to change the rules back since then. Did they? Nope. They only bring it up now to score political points. Here's what the left doesn't want you to understand. The problem isn't a lack of revenue. It's their addiction to spending. Our government takes in trillions of dollars every year. But instead of prioritizing what actually matters, like securing our border, supporting our military, and ensuring economic prosperity, they throw billions at pet projects, green energy boondoggles, and handouts to keep people dependent on the government. This is the contrast, folks. While Democrats were out there writing trillion-dollar checks with no plan to pay for them, Republicans are working on a border bill that is fully funded. That's the difference between a party that respects taxpayers and one that treats your hard-earned money like monopoly cash. At the end of the day, this debate isn't just about one amendment. It's about accountability. It's about exposing hypocrisy. And it's about making sure that the American people aren't fooled by politicians who suddenly rediscover fiscal responsibility when it's politically convenient. If you're sick of this nonsense, if you believe in real conservative values, like lower taxes, responsible spending, and a government that works for the people instead of against them, then make sure your voice is heard. Call your representatives, support candidates who actually fight for your interests, and most importantly, stay informed. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this video to spread the truth. God bless America, and I'll see you next time.